Close your eyes and picture a beach. White sand, blue water, palm trees. Can you see it? Good. Now open your eyes. You're still here, still in the same room, and probably facing the same problems as before. The beach didn't help because it never does. We think imagination is about picturing things in our minds, escaping into fantasy, daydreaming about better circumstances, and we treat it like a mental vacation from reality. When you close your eyes, imagine something pleasant, feel briefly better, and then you return to your life unchanged. But this isn't actually imagination. This is something else entirely. And understanding the difference might be one of the most important things that you can do for your own development. There is a philosopher named Henry Corbin who made a distinction that completely changes how we think about imagination. He separated what he called the imaginary from the imaginal. And the difference between them is the difference between staying stuck and actually growing as a person. The imaginary is what we usually think of as imagination. You form a picture in your mind and you look at it. You picture the beach and you picture yourself on a tropical vacation or the life that you wish you had. You're essentially creating images and observing them like you're watching a movie in your head. And this takes you away from reality. It's pure fantasy and escapism. The imaginal is completely different. The imaginal isn't about looking at images. It's about looking through them. Think about a child playing pretend. They tie a blanket around their neck and suddenly they're Superman. Now, they're not picturing Superman in their mind. They're looking at the world through Superman's eyes. What would Superman notice? How would he respond? They're essentially adopting a different way of seeing reality. And that is the imaginal. You're not necessarily escaping reality, but engaging with it through a different lens. And this is how you develop. This is how you grow and mature as a person. Now, let's take things a step further. The wall that you're looking at right now. You think you're just perceiving it directly, but you're not. Your brain is taking tiny samples of visual information and constructing an image that you are looking through. You're not seeing the wall. You're seeing through an image that your brain built of the wall. The space inside your head where you think, that's imaginal too. It's not a physical space, but it's not pure fiction either. It's a space that lets you become aware of your own thinking. The imaginal exists between the inner and the outer, between what your mind creates and what reality presents. It's the space where development happens, where you can try on different perspectives and see what they reveal about the world. And we have lost access to it. We are drowning in the imaginary while starving for the imaginal. Look at how we use imagination now. We scroll through Instagram looking at images of lives that we don't have. We binge Netflix shows to escape into fictional worlds and play video games where we pretend to be the heroes. And none of it changes us. None of it helps us see reality differently. We're just looking at pictures in our heads while life passes us by. And this is escapism. You picture something pleasant to avoid dealing with what's actually in front of you. And when you open your eyes and the show ends, or when you close that book, you're exactly where you started. Nothing has developed or matured. You just took a mental vacation and came back to the same problems. But The imaginal is the opposite. A child playing Superman is not escaping reality. They're simply practicing seeing reality from a different angle. They're developing their ability to take other perspectives and learning what it means to be heroic, brave, and to help others. They're maturing through play. And this is why play is so important. Not to escape, but to grow. And we talk about play all the time in contexts we consider beautiful or meaningful. Playing music, going to a play. In martial arts, you don't do Tai Chi, you play it. Same verb as playing music. There's something important about play that a lot of people have forgotten. Play is imaginal. It's not about escaping into fantasy. It's about engaging with reality through a transformative lens. But we have turned imagination into pure consumption, along with everything else. We don't play anymore. We simply watch other people play. And we don't imagine ourselves in different perspectives, but we look at images that make us feel briefly good. We've confused the imaginary with the imaginal, and we are paying the price. This explains so much about why modern life feels stuck, why therapy can go on for years without producing any real change, and why we can consume endless self-help content and never improve. Because we are operating in the imaginary and picturing the person we want to be. We're imagining the life we wish we had and looking at images of better versions of ourselves. But we're not looking through anything or adopting new perspectives that reveal reality differently. We're just daydreaming and calling it growth. Real imagination, the imaginal kind, is active and developmental. It requires you to actually engage the world from a different standpoint. Not to picture yourself being confident, but to look at your actual circumstances through the lens of confidence and see what that reveals. Not to fantasize about being successful, but to examine your real situation through the perspective of someone who takes their work seriously. The imaginal is between inner and outer. It's not purely in your head or in the world. It's the interface between the two, where your perspective meets reality and transforms it. When you look through the imaginal, you're not escaping. You're discovering aspects of reality that you couldn't see before. And this is why good literature works differently than escapist fantasy. When you read a great novel, you're not necessarily just picturing the events, but seeing through the characters' perspectives. You're adopting their way of viewing the world. And when you close the book, you carry that perspective with you and see your own life differently. That's imaginal and transformative. Compare that to scrolling through social media. You're just looking at images, picture after picture after picture, none of them asking you to adopt a new perspective. None of them reveal reality differently. Just an endless stream of stuff to look at. And we wonder why we always feel empty afterwards. Because the imaginal requires effort. The child playing Superman has to actively maintain that perspective and ask themselves what Superman would notice, how he would act, and what he cares about. And this takes work. This is why it's developmental. You're exercising your ability to see from multiple standpoints. And the imaginary requires nothing. You just look at pleasant images and feel briefly good. No development or growth or maturity. Just passive consumption of fantasy. And our entire culture has been optimized for the imaginary. Social media is designed to keep you looking at images, and streaming services want you to consume content. The algorithm feeds you exactly what you want to see, so you never have to adopt an uncomfortable perspective. Everything is smooth and easy and requires nothing of you. We have built a world that keeps us stuck in the imaginary while preventing access to the imaginal. And then we're surprised when people report feeling stuck, unfulfilled, like they're not growing or maturing. Of course, they feel that way. They're trapped in pure fantasy with no access to the transformative power of real imagination. Now, this connects us to something deeper. Your sense of self, your subjectivity, is largely imaginal. That space inside your head where you think and you reflect, well, that's not a physical location. You can't necessarily open someone's skull and find it, but it's also not purely fiction. It is a real space that allows you to become aware of your own cognition. It's imaginal, between the inner and the outer. And developing this imaginal space is crucial. You need to be able to step back from your immediate reactions and examine them. You need to adopt different perspectives on your own thoughts and feelings. You need to look through different lenses at your own situation. And this is what it means to mature psychologically. But if you never practice using the imaginal, if you spend all of your time in this passive consumption of the imaginary, this capacity atrophies. You lose the ability to see yourself and your circumstances from multiple angles. You become trapped in a single perspective, and usually it's the one that feels the most comfortable and most familiar, which is why people stay stuck in these same patterns for decades. They're not imagining themselves differently. They're just picturing themselves in better circumstances and fantasizing about external changes while never developing the internal capacity to see through a different lens. The imaginal is also crucial for empathy. When you genuinely understand another person's perspective, you are not just picturing what they might be thinking. You are looking at the world through their eyes and adapting their standpoint and seeing what becomes visible from there. This is imaginal. This is how you actually connect with people. But we've replaced this with the imaginary version. We picture what we think they might be feeling based on projecting our own emotions on them. We create an image of their inner life and observe it like a movie. Because we are not actually looking through their perspective. We're just making up a story about them and watching it in our heads. Fake empathy is imaginary, but real empathy is imaginal. And we've optimized for the fake version because it's easier and more comfortable. And this explains why certain practices actually help people and others don't. Meditation can be imaginal when it allows you to observe your thoughts from a different standpoint. But it does become imaginary when it's just about picturing peaceful scenes to feel temporarily calm. And therapy can be imaginal when it helps you adopt new perspectives on your patterns. But it becomes imaginary when it's just about talking about problems without seeing them differently. The imaginary never makes you uncomfortable. And that's kind of the point. It's temporary relief from reality. But comfort does not produce growth. Development actually does require some kind of discomfort. Maturity happens when you are forced to see things from angles that you might want to avoid. And the imaginal is the space where this happens. Now, We have systematically removed it from our lives in favor of smooth, easy, and comfortable. But we can gain access to it again by seeing things from different perspectives. When you're facing a problem, instead of fantasizing about how it's going to go away, ask how different people would see it. What would someone with different values think is important? Look through their eyes. The imaginal is still there. Reality is still waiting to reveal itself from multiple perspectives. You just have to stop escaping long enough to actually look. So, with that said, thank you guys so much for watching. And as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see y'all next time.